Jasmine Crockett was not your average politician. She had a way of commanding attention wherever she went, whether it was on Capitol Hill or in front of a camera. Her fiery speeches and bold statements made her stand out, earning her both admirers and detractors. Some people called her a hero for speaking truth to power, while others dismissed her as too aggressive or controversial. But one thing was certain: when Jasmine spoke, people listened. On this particular evening, Jasmine was getting ready for what she thought would be just another routine appearance on a popular primetime debate show. The show often featured heated discussions between opposing sides, and Jasmine loved being in the spotlight. She thrived on these moments, where she could showcase her sharp wit and argue her points with passion. As she adjusted her blazer and checked her makeup in the mirror backstage, she felt confident. After all, she had been through countless debates like this before. What could possibly go wrong? Across the stage, Kash Patel sat quietly, reviewing his notes. Unlike Jasmine, who relied heavily on charisma and quick thinking, Kash was known for his meticulous preparation. He wasn't flashy or loud. Instead, he preferred to let facts do the talking. Over the years, Kash had gained a reputation for uncovering uncomfortable truths and presenting them in a way that left little room for denial. His calm demeanor masked a razor-sharp mind, and tonight he had something up his sleeve. The moderator introduced the topic of the evening, government accountability, and welcomed both guests to the stage. Jasmine walked out first, waving to the audience with a confident smile. She took her seat across from Kash, who greeted her politely. The two exchanged pleasantries, but there was an unspoken tension in the air. Everyone watching could sense that this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. As the discussion began, Jasmine immediately took charge. She launched into a passionate speech about transparency and the need for leaders to be held accountable. "We can't keep letting corruption slide under the rug," she declared, pointing a finger for emphasis. "People deserve honesty from their elected officials." The audience clapped enthusiastically, clearly moved by her words. For a moment, it seemed like Jasmine was dominating the conversation. But Kash wasn't fazed. He nodded along, letting Jasmine finish her point before responding. When it was his turn to speak, he leaned forward slightly, his tone calm but firm. "I agree with you completely," he said, surprising Jasmine. "Accountability is crucial. Which is why I want to bring up something that's been brought to my attention recently." At those words, Jasmine's stomach tightened ever so slightly. Something in Kash's voice told her that whatever he was about to say wouldn't be good news for her. Still, she maintained her composure, smiling faintly as if daring him to continue. Kash reached into his folder and pulled out a document. It looked official, with stamps and signatures scattered across the page. Holding it up for the cameras, he explained, "This is a whistleblower report that has come to light. And unfortunately, Congresswoman Crockett, your name appears multiple times within its contents." The room fell silent. Even the usually noisy studio audience seemed to hold its breath. Jasmine blinked once, twice, then forced herself to laugh. "Oh, come on, Kash," she said, rolling her eyes theatrically. "You really expect me to believe this nonsense? Clearly, someone is trying to smear my name because they don't like what I stand for." Her dismissive response might have worked if Kash hadn't already anticipated her reaction. Instead of backing down, he pressed further. "I understand skepticism," he replied smoothly. "But let's look at some specifics. According to these emails," he paused dramatically, pulling out a printed copy of an email chain. "It seems you authorized the use of federal funds for purposes unrelated to your official duties." Now Jasmine's smile faltered. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her mind racing to process the situation. How had Kash gotten hold of those emails? More importantly, how much did he know? She tried to interrupt, raising her voice to drown him out, but Kash remained unfazed. With each passing second, he revealed more details, painting a picture that grew increasingly damning. Backstage, Jasmine's team watched anxiously on a monitor. One of her aides whispered urgently into her earpiece, offering suggestions on how to respond. But Jasmine barely heard them. All she could focus on was the growing knot of panic in her chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had always prided herself on staying one step ahead of her critics, but now she felt cornered. Despite her unease, Jasmine refused to give up without a fight. She raised her voice, accusing Kash of fabricating evidence and playing dirty politics. "You're desperate," she snapped, jabbing a finger in his direction. "This is nothing but a cheap attempt to discredit me because you know I'm right." For a brief moment, it almost seemed like she might regain control of the narrative. But Kash wasn't done yet. He calmly countered every accusation, using logic and evidence to dismantle her arguments. By the time the segment ended, Jasmine was visibly shaken, her earlier confidence replaced by frustration and anger. As the credits rolled, viewers were left buzzing with questions. Was Jasmine guilty of misconduct, or was this all part of a smear campaign? Social media exploded with reactions, with some people defending her and others condemning her actions. Meanwhile, Jasmine retreated backstage, her face flushed with embarrassment. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear: this was far from over. As the debate continued, the tension in the room grew thicker with every passing second. Jasmine Crockett tried her best to regain control of the situation, but Kash Patel wasn't backing down. He had come prepared, armed with documents and evidence that painted a picture she desperately wanted to erase. The audience, both in the studio and at home, was glued to their screens, watching as the drama unfolded in real time. Kash leaned forward slightly, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Jasmine's rising frustration. "Let me be clear," he said, his voice steady and measured. "This isn't about politics or personal vendettas. It's about accountability. And based on what we're seeing here, there are serious questions that need answers." He held up another document, this one marked with official seals and signatures. These emails show repeated instances where federal resources were allegedly redirected for personal use. Jasmine's face flushed red. She clenched her fists under the table, trying to keep herself composed. But inside, her mind was racing. How had Kash gotten access to those emails? Who had leaked them? More importantly, how much did he actually know? For years, she had managed to stay one step ahead of her critics, deflecting accusations with charm and confidence. But now, it felt like the walls were closing in around her. "This is ridiculous," Jasmine finally blurted out, her voice rising several decibels. She gestured wildly, pointing at Kash as if trying to physically push back against his accusations. "You're taking things out of context. These emails don't prove anything, they're just snippets meant to twist the truth." Kash didn't flinch. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if he had expected this exact reaction. "I understand why you'd say that," he replied, his tone almost sympathetic. "But let's break it down further. Here's an email from your office, requesting funds for travel expenses. That's normal, right? Except the destination listed here doesn't match any official event records. Care to explain?" The audience gasped audibly. Even the moderator looked stunned, leaning forward in his chair as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Cameras zoomed in on Jasmine's face, capturing every flicker of emotion. Her jaw tightened, and for a split second, she looked, unsure of what to say next. But then she forced a laugh, a loud, exaggerated laugh that sounded more nervous than amused. "You're grasping at straws, Kash," she shot back, shaking her head dismissively. "Anyone who knows anything about government work understands that paperwork can get messy. Mistakes happen all the time. Are you really going to crucify me over clerical errors?" Her attempt to downplay the situation only seemed to embolden Kash. He smiled faintly, as though he had been waiting for her to make that exact argument. "Fair point," he conceded. "Mistakes do happen. But when patterns emerge, when multiple discrepancies align, it raises legitimate concerns. Let's look at another example." He flipped through his stack of papers and pulled out yet another document. "This bank statement shows transactions linked directly to accounts associated with your name," Kash explained, tapping the paper for emphasis. "And guess what? Those transactions coincide perfectly with the dates mentioned in these emails. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe not." By now, Jasmine was visibly sweating. She tugged at the collar of her blouse, trying to cool down, but the heat of the moment was overwhelming. Her usual quick wit and sharp tongue weren't enough to counter Kash's relentless barrage of facts. Every time she tried to deflect or deny, he countered with more evidence, leaving her scrambling to keep up. "I'm telling you, this is all part of a smear campaign," Jasmine shouted, slamming her hand on the table for effect. The sound echoed through the studio, startling everyone, including herself. For a brief moment, silence filled the air. Then Kash spoke again, his voice softer but no less impactful. "If that's true," he said, tilting his head slightly, "then why not release the full documentation yourself? Transparency would go a long way toward clearing your name. Unless—" He let the sentence trail off, allowing the implication to hang heavy in the air. Jasmine opened her mouth to respond, but hesitated. She knew better than to fall into that trap. Admitting she couldn't, or wouldn't, provide complete transparency would only make her look guilty. So instead, she doubled down on her earlier claims. "You're twisting everything to fit your narrative," she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. "I've done nothing wrong, and I won't let you drag my reputation through the mud." The audience erupted into murmurs, some siding with Jasmine, others nodding along with Kash. Social media was ablaze with hashtags like Crockett Exposed and Kash Drops, the bomb trending within minutes. People tweeted screenshots of the debate, dissecting every word and gesture. Memes flooded timelines, poking fun at Jasmine's increasingly frantic behavior, while praising Kash for his calm and calculated approach. Backstage, Jasmine's team scrambled to figure out their next move. One aide whispered urgently into her earpiece, offering talking points and strategies to steer the conversation away from the allegations. Another frantically typed on a laptop, searching for anything they could use to discredit Kash's claims. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Millions of viewers had witnessed the exchange live, and the internet never forgets. On stage, the moderator tried to intervene, sensing that the discussion was spiraling out of control. "Let's take a step back," he suggested, looking between Jasmine and Kash. "Perhaps we can focus on broader issues rather than specific accusations," but Kash wasn't ready to let go just yet. "With respect," he interjected, "the public deserves to know the truth. If Congresswoman Crockett has nothing to hide, she should welcome the opportunity to address these concerns openly and honestly." Jasmine glared at him, her eyes blazing with fury. She wanted to scream, to storm off the stage, to do anything to escape the suffocating spotlight. But she couldn't. Not without confirming everyone's worst suspicions. So she forced herself to sit still, to maintain her composure even as her world crumbled around her. For the remainder of the segment, Kash methodically laid out his case, presenting document after document, each one adding another layer to the growing controversy. Jasmine fought back with everything she had: denials, deflections, accusations, but none of it seemed to stick. By the time the show ended, it was clear that Kash had won this round. As the credits rolled and the cameras cut away, Jasmine sat frozen in her chair, staring blankly at the table in front of her. Her heart pounded in her chest and her hands trembled slightly. She had faced tough interviews before, but nothing like this. Nothing so public, so humiliating, so devastating. Kash, on the other hand, remained calm and collected. He gathered his notes, thanked the moderator, and stood up to leave. As he walked off the stage, he glanced briefly at Jasmine, his expression unreadable. Whether it was satisfaction, pity, or something else entirely, no one could tell. For Jasmine, the nightmare was far from over. The fallout from this explosive revelation would ripple across the nation, sparking debates, investigations, and endless speculation. Her once unshakable confidence was shaken to its core, and she knew that rebuilding trust, if it was even possible, would be an uphill battle. But for now, all she could do was sit there, surrounded by chaos, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The moment the live broadcast ended, Jasmine Crockett bolted out of her chair and stormed off the stage. Her team was waiting for her backstage, their faces a mix of panic and urgency. "We need to act fast," one of them whispered, holding a phone that buzzed incessantly with notifications. The internet had already exploded, dissecting every word, every gesture, every slip-up from the debate. Social media timelines were flooded with memes, hot takes, and hashtags like Jasmine Crockett Exposed trending worldwide. Jasmine paced back and forth in the green room, her high heels clicking against the floor. She looked like a caged animal, restless and furious. "This is insane," she muttered under her breath, running her fingers through her hair. "He set me up. Kash Patel knew exactly what he was doing. He planned this whole thing." Her voice rose with each sentence until she was practically shouting. Her aides exchanged worried glances. They knew better than to interrupt her when she was this worked up. But time was running out. The longer they waited to respond, the more damage would be done. One of her senior advisors finally stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "Congresswoman, we need to get ahead of this. Right now, the narrative is spiraling out of control. We have to counter it before it sticks." Jasmine stopped pacing and turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "Counter it? How am I supposed to counter something that's completely false? Those emails are taken out of context, and those so-called bank statements. Who even knows if they're real?" She threw her hands up in frustration, pacing again as if movement could somehow help her think more clearly. Her team tried to offer solutions, suggesting press releases, social media posts, and even preemptive legal action. But Jasmine wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was racing, replaying every second of the debate over and over again. She kept thinking about how Kash had stayed so calm while she unraveled on live TV. His composure had made her look unhinged, irrational. It infuriated her. Meanwhile, Kash Patel was riding the wave of public attention. As soon as the segment ended, he appeared on a post-debate analysis show, breaking down his findings in greater detail. He spoke with the same measured confidence that had unnerved Jasmine earlier, explaining how he had uncovered the documents and why he believed they warranted further investigation. "I'm not here to accuse anyone without evidence," he said, leaning slightly toward the interviewer. "But when patterns emerge, we have a responsibility to ask questions. Transparency matters." His words resonated with many viewers, especially those who had grown skeptical of politicians in general. Some praised Kash for shining a light on potential corruption, while others remained cautious, questioning whether the allegations were politically motivated. Either way, the conversation dominated headlines, talk shows, and online forums. Everyone wanted to know, was Jasmine Crockett guilty, or was she being unfairly targeted? Back at her office, Jasmine huddled with her closest advisors late into the night. Exhaustion lined their faces, but no one dared suggest calling it quits. They brainstormed strategies, rehearsed responses, and crafted statements designed to shift the narrative in Jasmine's favor. But the challenge was immense. Kash's claims had struck a nerve, tapping into widespread distrust of government officials. Convincing the public that the accusations were baseless wouldn't be easy. By morning, Jasmine emerged with a plan. She decided to go on the offensive, framing herself as a victim of political warfare. In a series of fiery tweets, she accused Kash Patel of orchestrating a smear campaign fueled by partisan bias. "They're coming after me because I speak truth to power," she wrote, attaching a photo of herself standing confidently in front of the Capitol building. "But I won't back down. Let's see what happens when they try to silence a fighter." Her supporters rallied around her, flooding social media with messages of solidarity. Hashtags like "Chatting Stand with Jasmine" began trending alongside "Jasmine Crockett Exposed," creating a divided discourse. Progressives defended her as a champion of justice, being unfairly attacked by conservatives, while critics dismissed her denials as evasive tactics. The polarization only deepened the rift, making it harder to separate fact from fiction. Determined to regain control, Jasmine scheduled a string of appearances on major news networks. Each interview followed a similar pattern. She denied the allegations vehemently, accused Kash of fabricating evidence, and vowed to fight back legally. At times, she sounded convincing, her passion and conviction winning over sympathetic hosts. But other interviews revealed cracks in her armor. When pressed for specifics, she stumbled, contradicting earlier statements or deflecting questions altogether. These moments didn't escape notice. Clips of her inconsistencies quickly went viral, fueling skepticism among undecided viewers. Behind closed doors, tensions within Jasmine's camp grew palpable. Her advisors urged her to release supporting documentation to prove her innocence, but she resisted. "If I do that, it'll just give them more ammunition," she argued, pacing anxiously. "They'll twist whatever I put out there to fit their narrative." Her reluctance frustrated her team, who feared her refusal to engage directly with the evidence would only reinforce perceptions of guilt. As days passed, the scandal dominated the news cycle. Late-night comedians joked about Jasmine's meltdown, on air, exaggerating her expressions for comedic effect. Political analysts debated the implications, speculating whether the controversy would impact her career, or even lead to an ethics investigation. Meanwhile, Kash Patel continued to amplify the issue, appearing on podcasts, radio shows, and cable news programs to discuss his findings. His calm demeanor and methodical approach earned him praise from critics and admirers alike. For Jasmine, the pressure became unbearable. Sleep eluded her, and her appetite vanished. Every waking moment felt like a battle, fighting to defend her reputation against mounting scrutiny. Friends and allies reached out to offer support, but their reassurances did little to ease her anxiety. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had worked so hard to build was slipping through her fingers. One particularly grueling day, after yet another hostile interview, Jasmine retreated to her private quarters. Sitting alone in the dimly lit room, she stared blankly at the wall, replaying the events of the past week in her mind. For the first time, doubt crept in. Had she been too reckless, too confident, too dismissive of potential consequences? The thought terrified her, but she couldn't ignore it entirely. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the table beside her, lighting up with alerts from various apps. She ignored it, unable to face the barrage of opinions, criticisms, and conspiracy theories swirling around her name. Instead, she allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability, letting tears stream down her face as the weight of the situation crashed down on her. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't someone who gave up easily. By the next morning, she had resolved to take back control. If Kash Patel wanted a fight, she'd give him one, but on her terms. She called an emergency meeting with her team, instructing them to prepare for a bold move. "We're going to call his bluff," she declared, her voice firm despite the lingering exhaustion in her eyes. "If he thinks he can destroy me with lies, he's mistaken. It's time to show the world the truth." Her team nodded, energized by her renewed determination. Together, they devised a strategy that would put Kash Patel in the spotlight and force him to answer for his claims. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: the battle was far from over. The next morning, Jasmine Crockett woke up with a steely determination in her eyes. She had spent the night tossing and turning, replaying every moment of the debate and Kash Patel's accusations over and over again in her mind. But instead of letting despair take hold, she decided to channel her frustration into action. This wasn't just about defending herself anymore. It was about proving that Kash Patel's claims were nothing more than a smear campaign designed to tarnish her reputation. She called an emergency meeting with her team, gathering everyone around a large conference table littered with papers, laptops, and coffee cups. The air was tense but charged with purpose. "Listen up," Jasmine began, her voice firm and commanding. "We're not going to sit back and let Kash Patel drag my name through the mud. If he wants to play dirty, we'll hit him where it hurts, right? In the court of public opinion." Her team leaned in, ready for instructions. They knew this was their last chance to turn the tide. Jasmine outlined her plan. She would hold a high-profile press conference outside Capitol Hill, flanked by lawyers and supporters to address the allegations head-on. She would present her side of the story, complete with documents and evidence to counter Kash's narrative. And most importantly, she would frame herself as a victim of political warfare, a fighter standing up against baseless attacks. The press conference was scheduled for noon, giving her team less than 24 hours to prepare. It was a tight timeline, but they worked tirelessly, pulling together everything they needed. By the time the event rolled around, the steps of Capitol Hill were packed with reporters, cameras, and curious onlookers. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, everyone eager to hear what Jasmine had to say. Jasmine stepped up to the podium dressed impeccably in a tailored navy blue suit. Her demeanor was calm and composed, a stark contrast to her fiery performance during the debate. She took a deep breath, looked directly into the cameras, and began to speak. "Good afternoon, everyone," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Over the past few days, my name has been dragged through the mud based on false accusations and misleading information. Today, I'm here to set the record straight." She paused for dramatic effect, letting her words sink in before continuing. "What you've seen and heard is not the truth. These allegations are part of a calculated effort to discredit me because of the work I do and the values I stand for. I will not let fear or intimidation silence me." Her tone grew more passionate as she spoke, drawing murmurs of agreement from some members of the crowd. Jasmine then launched into a detailed explanation of the emails and financial records Kash had referenced. She admitted that certain transactions existed, but insisted they were legitimate and approved through proper channels. To prove her point, she held up a stack of documents, waving them for the cameras to capture. "Here are the full records," she declared. "Every single detail is accounted for. If anyone doubts my integrity, they can review these documents themselves." Her legal team chimed in next, providing technical explanations about how government funding works and why discrepancies might appear in paperwork. They argued that any irregularities were clerical errors or misunderstandings, not evidence of wrongdoing. For a brief moment, it seemed like Jasmine was regaining control of the narrative. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, and some viewers at home began to question whether Kash's accusations were as ironclad as they initially seemed. But Kash Patel wasn't idle. Within hours of Jasmine's press conference, he released a statement of his own, dissecting her defense piece by piece. Using social media and appearances on cable news, he pointed out inconsistencies in her documentation and highlighted gaps in her explanations. "Transparency means showing all the facts, not cherry-picking what suits your argument," he tweeted, attaching annotated screenshots of the disputed records. His followers ate it up, sharing his posts and amplifying his message. The back and forth between Jasmine and Kash dominated the news cycle for days. Every new revelation sparked fresh debates, with both sides presenting conflicting interpretations of the same evidence. Some people praised Jasmine for standing her ground and providing clarity, while others accused her of obfuscating the truth. Critics scrutinized her documents, finding omissions and contradictions that raised more questions than answers. One widely shared article noted that key details were missing from her disclosures: fuel, time. The fallout from Jasmine Crockett's press conference and Kash Patel's counterarguments created a whirlwind of confusion, speculation, and heightened public interest. Both sides were dug in deep, unwilling to concede an inch. For Jasmine, the stakes had never been higher. She was determined to fight back with everything she had, even if it meant taking risks that could either save her reputation or destroy it completely. Determined to reclaim the upper hand, Jasmine announced a bold move. She would challenge Kash Patel to a rematch on live television. "If he's so confident in his evidence," she declared during a brief media appearance, "then let's settle this once and for all. I'll bring irrefutable proof of my innocence, and we'll let the American people decide who's telling the truth." Her words were defiant, almost daring Kash to accept. Unsurprisingly, Kash didn't hesitate. He agreed to the rematch almost immediately, issuing a statement that read, "Transparency is the cornerstone of accountability. If Congresswoman Crockett has nothing to hide, then she should welcome the opportunity to present her case openly. Let's do this." The announcement sent shockwaves through the media landscape. Networks scrambled to secure the rights to host the highly anticipated showdown, knowing it would draw record-breaking viewership. Social media erupted once again, with fans and critics alike speculating about what might happen next. Would Jasmine finally clear her name? Or would Kash deliver another knockout blow, preparing for round 2 in the days leading up to the rematch? Both Jasmine and Kash prepared meticulously. Jasmine worked around the clock with her team, poring over documents, rehearsing responses, and strategizing ways to undermine Kash's credibility. She brought in forensic accountants, legal experts, and communication specialists to bolster her defense. Every detail mattered, Every email, every transaction, every line item in the disputed records needed to be explained convincingly. Her team also focused on reframing the narrative. They crafted talking points designed to portray Jasmine as a champion of transparency and justice, while painting Kash as a politically motivated opportunist. "We're not just fighting for you, Congresswoman," one advisor told her. "We're fighting for the millions of Americans who believe in fairness and due process." Meanwhile, Kash remained calm and methodical. He reviewed his existing evidence, cross-referenced it with new information, and prepared rebuttals for any potential arguments Jasmine might raise. Unlike Jasmine's high-energy approach, Kash's strategy was rooted in precision and patience. He knew that emotions often clouded judgment, and he intended to exploit that weakness by staying composed under pressure. As the day of the rematch approached, anticipation reached fever pitch. Supporters of both figures rallied online, flooding social media with hashtags like #Crockett Fights Back and #Kash for Truth. Talk shows debated which side had the stronger case, while late-night comedians joked about the drama unfolding in real time. The entire nation seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see how this latest chapter would unfold. The rematch begins. When the night of the rematch arrived, the studio was packed to capacity. Cameras flashed non-stop as Jasmine and Kash took their seats across from each other. The moderator introduced the topic, accountability and transparency, and reminded the audience that civility was expected throughout the discussion. But everyone knew better. This wasn't just a debate, it was a battle for survival. Jasmine opened strong, delivering a passionate opening statement. "I'm here today because I believe in honesty and integrity," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "What you've seen so far are lies and half-truths designed to distract from the real issues facing our country. Tonight, I will show you the full picture, the unedited, unfiltered truth." She proceeded to walk the audience through her documentation, highlighting key sections and explaining discrepancies. At times, she sounded convincing, especially when she cited examples of similar cases involving other politicians where no wrongdoing was found. Her supporters cheered loudly, encouraged by her confidence and poise. But Kash was ready. As soon as Jasmine finished, he leaned forward, his expression neutral but piercing. "Let's address these so-called explanations," he began, his tone measured but firm. "Yes, there are always complexities in government finances. But when patterns emerge, when multiple transactions align suspiciously, it raises legitimate concerns." He then launched into a detailed breakdown of Jasmine's evidence, pointing out inconsistencies and gaps. For instance, he noted that several of the documents she presented lacked proper verification stamps or signatures. Others contained dates that didn't match official records. Each revelation chipped away at her credibility, leaving her scrambling to respond. A desperate gamble. As Kash continued to dismantle her arguments, Jasmine grew visibly agitated. Her earlier composure began to crack, replaced by frustration and desperation. At one point, she interrupted him mid-sentence, shouting, "You're twisting everything to fit your agenda." But instead of backing down, Kash simply smiled faintly and pressed on, unfazed by her outbursts. Realizing she was losing ground, Jasmine made a risky move. She called upon a surprise witness, a former colleague who had worked closely with her on financial matters. The man, dressed in a suit and tie, took the stage looking nervous but resolute. He testified that he had personally overseen many of the transactions in question and insisted they were legitimate. For a moment, it seemed like Jasmine might turn the tide. The audience murmured approvingly, and some commentators praised her for bringing in outside support. But Kash wasn't done yet. During cross-examination, he asked pointed questions that exposed holes in the witness's testimony. When confronted with conflicting timelines and missing details, the man faltered, unable to provide satisfactory answers. By the time the segment ended, it was clear that Jasmine's gamble had backfired spectacular time. As the rematch drew to a close, the tension in the studio was palpable. The audience sat on edge, their emotions swinging between disbelief anger, and curiosity. Jasmine Crockett leaned back in her chair, visibly exhausted, but still defiant. Kash Patel, however, remained as composed as ever, his calm demeanor making him appear almost untouchable. The moderator wrapped up the segment with a final question. If you could leave viewers with one message tonight, what would it be? Jasmine seized the moment, leaning forward with a determined look in her eyes. The truth is messy, she began, her voice steady despite the chaos of the evening. But I've spent my career fighting for transparency and justice, and I won't let baseless accusations silence me. If people take anything away from tonight, I hope it's this. Don't believe everything you hear. Look deeper, ask questions, and demand proof. Her words resonated with some, particularly her loyal supporters who saw her as a fighter unfairly targeted by political opponents. But for many others, her impassioned plea fell flat. The inconsistencies in her evidence, coupled with Kash's relentless dissection of her claims, left lingering doubts that no amount of charisma could erase. Kash, when given the chance to speak, kept his response concise yet impactful. Accountability isn't personal. It's about ensuring trust in our institutions. If leaders aren't held to the highest standards, then we risk losing faith in the system itself. Tonight wasn't about attacking Congresswoman Crockett. It was about asking tough questions and seeking answers. His closing statement struck a chord with viewers who valued integrity over personality. While Jasmine had appealed to emotion, Kash grounded his argument in logic and principle, a contrast that underscored the divide between their approaches. The aftermath in the days following the rematch, public opinion remained sharply divided. For Jasmine's supporters, she was a symbol of resilience, standing firm against what they viewed as a politically motivated witch hunt. They flooded social media with messages of encouragement, urging her to keep fighting and not give up. Memes, depicting her as a fearless warrior facing impossible odds, went viral, reinforcing her image as someone willing to take on powerful adversaries. However, critics were quick to capitalize on the weaknesses exposed during the debate. News outlets dissected every misstep, highlighting moments where Jasmine struggled to explain discrepancies or grew visibly flustered under pressure. Late-night comedians mocked her meltdown, turning her outbursts into punchlines that circulated widely online. Even some members of her own party distanced themselves publicly, fearing association with controversy at such a critical juncture in their careers. Calls for an ethics investigation intensified, with lawmakers from both sides calling for transparency. Some demanded a formal inquiry into the allegations, while others urged caution, warning against rushing to judgment without sufficient evidence. For Jasmine, the scrutiny became suffocating. Every move she made, every statement, every appearance was scrutinized through a microscope. Her once unshakable confidence began to waver, replaced by weariness and frustration. Behind the scenes, her team scrambled to mitigate the damage. They crafted carefully worded statements, organized rallies to rally grassroots support, and worked tirelessly to discredit Kash's claims. But the tide seemed unstoppable. Each attempt to counter Kash only raised more questions, further entrenching the narrative that something was amiss. Kash Patel's rising star, while Jasmine grappled with the fallout, Kash Patel emerged from the ordeal stronger than ever. His performance during the debate solidified his reputation as a master tactician capable of dismantling even the most formidable opponents. Media appearances poured in, with networks eager to feature him as a commentator on accountability and government ethics. Conservative pundits hailed him as a hero, crediting him with exposing corruption and holding leaders accountable. But Kash didn't rest on his laurels. Instead, he used the momentum to push for broader reforms, advocating for stricter oversight and greater transparency in government operations. He wrote op-eds, gave interviews, and launched initiatives aimed at empowering citizens to hold their elected officials accountable. His calm, fact-based approach resonated with audiences tired of partisan bickering, earning him respect across ideological lines. For Kash, the controversy surrounding Jasmine Crockett wasn't just about winning a debate, it was about sparking a larger conversation. By shining a light on potential misconduct, He hoped to inspire others to demand better from their leaders. Whether or not Jasmine was guilty of wrongdoing, the episode served as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and accountability in public service. Jasmine's crossroads for Jasmine, the scandal marked a turning point in her career. Though she continued to fight back, launching campaigns to restore her reputation and challenge her critics, the shadow of doubt lingered. Allies within her party grew quieter, hesitant to associate too closely with someone embroiled in controversy. Opponents seized every opportunity to paint her as reckless and untrustworthy. Yet amidst the turmoil, Jasmine refused to step down. She doubled down on her advocacy work, focusing on issues like economic inequality and social justice. In speeches and interviews, she framed herself as a survivor, a woman who had faced unprecedented attacks but refused to be silenced. Her resilience earned admiration from some quarters, though it did little to quell the skepticism surrounding her. Privately, however, Jasmine wrestled with self-doubt. The experience had shaken her confidence, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about her vulnerabilities and blind spots. She realized that while passion and conviction were essential traits for a leader, they weren't enough on their own. Transparency, humility, and accountability mattered just as much, if not more. Lessons learned. The saga of Jasmine Crockett versus Kash Patel became a defining moment in modern politics, illustrating the complexities of power, perception, and accountability. For Jasmine, it was a humbling reminder of the perils of hubris and the importance of maintaining trust with the public. For Kash, it was validation of his belief that facts and perseverance could cut through even the thickest layers of spin. Ultimately, the story served as a cautionary tale for anyone in positions of authority. It highlighted the dangers of complacency, the consequences of cutting corners, and the enduring value of integrity. Whether Jasmine's actions warranted the level of scrutiny she received, or whether Kash's motives were purely altruistic, remained open to interpretation. What was clear, however, was that the events left an indelible mark on both individuals and the nation at large. As the dust settled, one thing was certain. The world would never forget the night Jasmine Crockett went head-to-head with Kash Patel, and how the clash exposed truths far beyond either of them.